It's Philosophy Talk. How do I love thee? Let me count the ways.
Let's see. There's romantic love,
Family love,
divine love,
love of country.
love of friends.
What do you get when you fall in love? A guy with a pen to burst your bubble.
There is a transformative element to all of these forms of love.
Our guest is Christopher Phillips, author of Socrates in Love.
Every type of love is a form of inquiry. I don't think of it so much in terms of a unifying essence as I do they have unifying ends. Can love itself be the ultimate object for you? It depends on what you want out of it.
The Varieties of Love.
Recorded before a live audience at Powell City of Books in Portland, Oregon.
Hi, I love you. I need to reproduce. Should I get flowers? What?
Coming up on Philosophy Talk.
After the news.
Welcome to Philosophy Talk, the program that questions everything.
Except your intelligence. I'm John Perry.
And I'm Ken Taylor. Today, Philosophy Talk is on the road. We're recording the program in front of a live audience at Powell City of Books in Portland, Oregon.
This is our second trip to Powell's. We're just delighted to be here with you all. Welcome, everyone, to Philosophy Talk. You know, wherever we go, wherever we tape the program, our thinking originates back at Philosopher's Corner on the Stanford campus.
Our topic today is the varieties of love. Self-love, romantic love, love of humanity, love of family, love of friends, and even divine love.
We'll begin by asking what, if anything, the different forms of love have in common. Do they really share a unifying essence? Or do we just use love as a word for a bunch of different stuff with no deep unity?
Next, we'll ask what distinguishes the different forms of love. We'll examine their different roles in our lives and the different demands they place on us. We owe our erotic partners things we do not owe our friends. We owe our friends things we do not owe humanity at large. How do we account for those differences?
Finally, we'll ask what happens when love's demands compete. Would you betray a friend to save your lover? Would you betray your lover to save your country? Would you betray your country to save humanity? Or can we somehow have it all and enjoy the many varieties of love without any conflict?
So, John, when most people think of love, I think they think first of romantic love, and then maybe after that they think of love of family. You know, that's what the Greeks called storge, and then love of friends, what the Greeks called philia. Why do you think they think of romantic love first?
Well, I think they think of romantic love first because that's real love. These are concrete forms of love that we can feel viscerally from the inside. Love of humanity, love of country, that's pretty abstract. I'm not sure it's really love at all.
Well, why do you say love of country or love of humanity is abstract? Right?
Well, what do you love when you love your country? When you love your country, you don't love each one in your country. You don't love all of your fellow citizens. You probably wouldn't even like them if you knew them, which you don't.
Well, okay. I'll grant you that love of country doesn't reduce to love of each particular fellow citizen, but that doesn't mean that love of country or say love of humanity doesn't have a powerful grip on us. I mean, think of all the people who sacrifice so much for love of country. They even lay down their lives for love of country or love of humanity or love of God for that matter.
Well, there's no doubt that so-called love for these abstractions can have great power in the lives of some people. For some, it feels similar to the more personal kinds of love, and that's why they call it love. But I think there's something more basic, more real about love when it's focused on particular people, close friends, children, or a romantic partner.
I don't think I agree with you. I don't think that love, like erotic love, is really the paradigm of love. I mean, after all, it's aimed at one person at a time, and it's important. Why it's important? Because we need to reproduce. But think of love of friends or country or humanity. What do those do for us? They unite us into big, consequential groups, and I don't think we'd be much of anywhere as a species if we didn't have the capacities for these kinds of love.
Well, big, consequential, warring groups, I'm not sure we are much of anywhere as a species. And besides that, I don't want to be around when you tell your wife that love of country is more important than love of her.
I'm not denying, Claire, I'm not denying that erotic or romantic love plays a major role in our lives. And I don't think any form of love could supplant it. But it really is just one kind of love among others, and they all have their place in a well-lived life.
Well, you may be right about that, Ken. A couple of shows ago, you were right about something. But since most people probably think first and foremost about romantic love, why don't we pretend that we can start there too?
Okay, and to help us do that, our roving philosophical reporter, Zoe Corneli, takes a look at the dynamics of romantic love with someone who spends a lot of time thinking about it. She files this report.
Nuances of character are made of many, many different elements, not all of which show up in every scene on every page.
The members of Portland's Rose City Romance Writers Group are hearing a presentation on how to add layering and depth to their writing.
How does your character feel about the way they look?
Besides practical advice, the group provides an outlet for members to share their successes.
All right, other kudos.
I got my cover.
The group's president is Maggie Lynch, herself an aspiring romance novelist.
People tend to think of it as porn or porn for women, which it certainly is not.
When I think of romance novels, the image that comes to mind is something you'd find near the checkout aisle of your local supermarket, a metallic pink cover with a picture of Fabio clutching a half-dressed woman. Lynch says there's a lot more to the genre than that stereotype would suggest.
Love is the center of our lives, I think. You know, whether it's love for your children or your family or your spouse or significant other. And I love relationships. I think that it's what makes our lives happy or sad, rich or not. And the romance novel is a great way to explore all of those things.
Lynch started writing romance novels after her 50th birthday.
You know, I think everyone has these times in their life when they kind of reevaluate. Maybe it was my midlife crisis, but...
She'd been working for 30 years in the fairly unromantic academic field of distance learning and decided to finally take up a lifelong dream.
When I write a romance novel, it's a very creative side of me. It's very emotional. I get to decide who lives and dies, but most of all, I get to talk about love, which makes everyone happy.
Like most so-called genre fiction, Lynch says romance novels follow set patterns.
Certainly there must be a romance between two people, and by the end of the book, there's a happy ever after ending, which means that the two people have made some kind of commitment to each other.
Now, that may seem like a narrow view of love, but Lynch says it's one that readers are powerfully drawn to.
The romance market, in terms of the genre market, has 55% of the buying public. So I think a lot of people still want to see that man and woman get together, live happily ever after. And although we may not be monogamous for 50 years in our regular life, I think a lot of us have the fantasy that that still exists, that you can find your one soulmate and that person will be it for you.
The relationships in Maggie Lynch's own life haven't exactly followed the standard plotline. She spent years raising foster children, she's divorced, remarried, and a stepmother. Those elements show up in her writing. In addition to the standard, steamy, sexy stuff, her unpublished novel Expendable develops a non-romantic relationship between an adult and a child.
And this is a retired Marine Corps Special Ops guy who has found a woman murdered near his cabin, and running from her was a traumatized young boy. And this is a little bit about the relationship that he's trying to form with this young boy. You want to pour your own milk today? He'd asked the kid the same thing every day this week, and so far no go. But he figured repetition was a good thing, something the kid could count on. To his surprise, the boy moved to the fridge and got the milk out. Then he slowly poured it into the glass, not spilling a single drop. The boy took his glass of milk and Reed's coffee cup and placed them on the table. Reed smiled. There was hope after all.
Lynch has published several short stories. She writes novels under the names Maggie Jameson and Maggie Bond. For Philosophy Talk, I'm Zoe Corneli.
We're coming to you from Powell City of Books in Portland, Oregon. I'm John Perry, along with Ken Taylor.
And we're joined now by Christopher Phillips. He's author of Socrates in Love, Philosophy for the Die-Hard Romantic. Chris, welcome to Philosophy Talk.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Chris, before we plunge into the topic of love, could you tell us a little bit about your Socrates Cafe movement? I mean, it's spread around the world. How did it get started? What gave you the idea for that?
Well, I started Socrates Cafe in 1996 during the Clinton era, when I felt that Americans of diverse dispositions no longer were gathering with people who thought differently than they did, just to engage in healthy exchanges. And it seemed like a ripe time to prove a lot of naysayers wrong, that Americans were no longer inured to engaging in thoughtful discourse. So also harking back to my Greek grandmother, my yaya, that I had the blood of Socrates in me, and this is what I should be doing, I decided this was the time to prove her right. And I started a Socrates Cafe in a little sliver of a coffee house in Montclair, New Jersey. And so lo and behold, 12 years later, we've got about 500 groups, and people seem to be engaging in it more than ever. And it's the right place to look for love. I met my wife at a Socrates Cafe.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. She was the only person who came. Now I tell her that she was standing at the door telling everyone else it was being discontinued or something, but I did. And 10 years to the day after I met her, our baby Calliope Alexis Phillips was born.
Well, that's terrific.
So, you too can meet the person of your dreams at a Socrates Cafe.
Well, I'll have to take the person of my dreams with me to the Socrates Cafe because I've been married to her for 45 years.
Okay.
But so thanks to your grandmother, thanks to you, it's a great movement and it's really terrific. But let's get back to the topic at hand.
Okay.
Varieties of love: self-love, romantic love, love of humanity, love of family. Is there a unifying essence? Is there one thing they all have in common that makes them call them all love, or is it just a smorgasbord of feelings?
I think that I don't think of it so much in terms of a unifying essence as I do they have unifying ends, and that none of these types of love can be all they can be if they're not sort of practiced in whole cloth combined. So if I don't love my fellow humans as much as I can't love my spouse or my child as much as possible. If I don't want for others what I would want for those nearest and dearest to me, then that love can't be all it can.
You made a distinction in passing. I want you to pause over that a little bit more. Not a unifying essence, but unifying ends. I mean, what's the distinction you're making?
Well, I think that there is a transformative element to all of these forms of love, that it brings about, that each type has a certain romance to it. It makes you think in terms of what more can I do with my life? What does it give birth to, whether it's a painting or a greater idea for democratic society or to buy your wife flowers or write her a poem, that in all these types of love, that it should ultimately make us feel more connected to one another.
So I love my wife.
Okay.
I love my wife deeply. I love my country sometimes, and sometimes deeply, and sometimes it makes me angry, right? But my relationship to my wife, this is back to the smorgasbord. My relationship to my wife is personal, one-on-one kind of thing. My relationship to my country, as John was saying, somehow a relationship to an abstract object. And even my relationship to humanity at large, I mean,
I guess
are we really justified in calling these all by the same name?
I don't think so. I think love of country can be highly personal. I think that if I want for my wife to be able to fulfill all of her aspirations, whether it's in education or in the arts, to have good health care, to be able to live a long and healthy life, then I want to make sure that my country is such that it gives everyone that opportunity. To me, it seems that they're both combined and both highly personal.
So in a way, there is an essence, and that all these kinds of love take us beyond the mere focus on ourselves.
I think so.
But the problem is they can take us in vastly different ways, like the famous character from Sartre that loves his mother, loves his country, wants to join the resistance, but those take him in two opposite ways. He can't really do both, can he?
I think that there are a lot of contradictions. Then the question is, are they contradictions that we should try to reconcile, or is it the tragic fact of life that we do have to make hard choices and weigh and measure which ones are the greatest priorities to us?
We're going to address that question in some depth, I hope. I mean, that's an important and deep question. This is a special edition of Philosophy Talk, coming to you from Powell City of Books in Portland, Oregon. We're talking about the many kinds of love with our guest, Christopher Phillips, author of Socrates and Love.
We've been talking about love as a genus, a category, and asking whether the different varieties of love we put into that category really share anything in common, an underlying essence. In our next segment, we're going to look at the varieties themselves and examine the differences between them or amongst them and the ways in which they move us.
The varieties of love, the many varieties of love, plus questions and comments from you, our live audience, when Philosophy Talk continues.
love really all you need? If so, what kind of love? Which variety of love? I'm John Perry.
And I'm Ken Taylor. This is Philosophy Talk, and our guest is Christopher Phillips, author of Socrates and Love.
What is love? Why does love move us so? Do different forms of love move us differently? Can you really love an abstraction like your country or humanity at large or mathematics like some people claim to? Have you ever felt divine love? What was that like? We're in the Pearl Room at Powell's City of Books in Portland. Have you ever loved a bookstore? We want the members of the audience to join in the discussion. Step right up to the microphones on either side of the room and get ready to share your thoughts with us.
So, Chris, when most people think of love, I think the first thing they think of is erotic or romantic love. Now, I don't want to denigrate that, but apart from the need to reproduce, what's really so special about romantic love? I mean, why do we spend so much of our energy and focus on finding just that one person?
I just want to make sure I got this straight, Ken. Apart from the need to reproduce, what's so really special about romantic love? That's your question.
Yeah. Well, what's so special about love?
Okay.
Suddenly it doesn't sound so, hi, I love you, I need to reproduce. Should I get flowers?
No, reproduction is a very important thing. Socrates, your hero, says it's the way we participate in immortality. So that's an important thing.
But
immortality through reproduction.
But it also is supposed to reveal beauty. I think that every type of love is a form of inquiry. Sexual love in particular. Does this please you? Does this please me? If not, let's try something else. I really do. I think it's that sort of attempt to bridge the chasm that exists between one person and another.
So what if your romantic partner isn't so beautiful? I mean, you can still be devoted and deeply in love and committed. And maybe your romantic partner is, compare him or her to all the people in the world, and you say, this is my love? Yes, this is my love. This, you know.
I don't know. I'll be interested to find out from the audience, but I think everyone sees a beauty in their romantic partner that maybe others don't. That they are beautiful. They might not be in the eyes of other beholders, but you do see something there that no one else does.
So is the illusion on the part of the one who's in love or the rest of the world? Is it because you're close and intimate, you just see something that's beautiful there that others miss, or is it?
I think
is it more like what is that word in psychology? Cognitive dissonance, because you're married, you're committed, your mind tricks you into thinking there's something there.
Yeah. Well, far be it from me to deny that the mind can play tricks on you, but I think that you do see something in that person that no one else does, and I think you would argue that everyone else is deluded. How can they not see?
But let me press you in another way.
Okay.
Okay. Suppose somebody else comes along,
okay,
who is more beautiful, who is more of everything, who helps you see more the beauty in yourself and the beauty in other things. So you got Susie over here, and then Sally over here comes along, more beautiful, more helpful to you. Do you stop loving Susie?
Oh dear, you're getting into my personal life now. Well, I have to tell you, oh dear. When I met, I had just left. I was separated when I met Cecilia, my wife now, and I did see something in her that made me realize that the relationship I was in some ways a delusion. That I wasn't necessarily living a lie, but it wasn't satisfying in the way that I had hoped it would be, and so a lot of hard truths suddenly came down on me, and at the same time, I wanted to, as that Rilke poem says, I wanted to change my life.
Socrates has this thing that always bugs me in the symposium about when you see true beauty, then you'll beat yourself over the head. Those aren't his exact words. For being so obsessed with the beauty of this particular, which pales in comparison. But you see, it's not when you. I think. Despite the way I phrased my question, I think love of this particular person is really deep and important because it's love of this particular person, not some quality in that person that could be superseded by another, right? It's not really love unless I love you in all your glory and not so glory.
Well, Socrates also said that, that love is the one subject on which I don't feel I'm very well versed, and left it sort of up to Diotima to be more of the instructor in that role. But the point was that you want to find that person who helps you learn about love and its various manifestations and hierarchies, that there is a soul out there that can enable you to bring that. Even romantic love has its base levels and its higher levels, and all other types arguably do too. And that right person for you helps you see the world through different lenses, helps you see yourself through different lenses, and as a result makes you want to dig into the world in ways that you otherwise wouldn't have.
Now, Socrates was married to Xanthippe, I think, for quite a while. And there is that dimension of it, too, that it's not like these two units come together and find things in their pre-existing selves that are unique and wonderful. But often, they may come together because of an arranged marriage, or they may come together because their hormones are going crazy. But over time, there can be something that they discover and value that didn't pre-exist. It kind of grew out of the relationship. Does your theory or Socrates' theory leave room for that?
I think that there has to be a creative, transformative element to it. I think that many of the most vibrant long-term relationships, romantic relationships, which I'm familiar, seems to be ones in which the couples have very different ideas, pursuits, but they seem to feed off of one another and to enable one to pursue those passions, to discover passions that maybe they otherwise didn't. They serve sort of as mirrors into one another's souls.
You're listening to Philosophy Talk. We're talking about the varieties of love with our guest, Christopher Phillips, in front of a live studio audience at Powell City of Books. And we've got some questions from that live audience. Welcome to Philosophy Talk, sir.
Hi, thanks for taking my question.
Tell us your name and where you're from.
I'm Brian. I'm from Portland, Oregon. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about the relationship between love and conflict. It seems like in all of the great love stories from, say, Romeo and Juliet to When Harry Met Sally, there is some amount of conflict, some obstacle to overcome that makes the love maybe more important because it's done so.
You got a thought about that, Chris?
Well, what do you think? Do you think that love at its best is imbued with conflict?
Well, I think in some respect I'm probably tainted by all the movies that I've seen growing up, because it seems like there's no perfect love unless you have to overcome, like I said, some obstacle. And that winning the prize of love is more, makes it that much more wholesome, that much more important.
I don't know. I mean, if it's easy and natural, love at first sight, that's pretty cool too. I mean, love comes in all varieties, and I don't think there's one. Do you think there's one way this thing goes, Chris?
I don't think so. I think that I wish that love had come easy to me. There was a lot of conflict and a lot of overcoming.
Let me ask. Thanks for the question. Let me ask you a different kind of question, because you said about this. What did you call it? A shared end, or something like that. A unifying end. That's how you put it. But you could tell these stories about lovers. It's them against the world. They live in a time of strife and conflict. I mean, maybe one comes from, Romeo and Juliet. One comes from one family, another comes from another family. All is not right with the world. Everybody's at odds. But here are these two lovers, alone against the world. Is there something wrong with that kind of love? I mean, there's not harmony and unity, but still they love each other deeply, utterly.
I think they are a world unto themselves, and there is a harmony and unity in that world amidst a sea of conflict. And then I think of the love, for instance, in 1984, when they betrayed their love of one another just out of fear for being tortured and tormented, and it led to lots of tragic endings.
On the issue of conflict, though, I'm not convinced that conflict is such an essential part of it. Love, first place, in the case of Romeo and Juliet, I think there was a little too much conflict. They both ended up dead. That's not exactly your great love story, I don't think. And one reason you always have conflict when you have a great literature about love is because of the requirements of great literature. Ozzie and Harriet, there's a love story. Not too much conflict. They
not
fell
very
in
great
love.
Literature.
Not great literature either. But the fact that there's no conflict, that's why it's not great literature. It doesn't mean that's not a perfectly happy kind of love. The conflict makes for the literature, but I don't know that it makes for the love or the happiness.
Okay. I think that there's a world of different types of colors to love. What makes love stories particularly memorable are ones in which there are things to be overcome, but it's not necessarily one that we'd all want to have.
So let's take some more questions from our live audience. We'll go to this side of the room.
Hi, I'm Michael from Vancouver, across the river. A lot of philosophers I've read are pretty skeptical of love. For example, Freud, Sartre, one of my favorites, Iris Murdoch. My question is, how do we distinguish between a genuine form of love and a feeling, a desire just to console ourselves, or the self-deceptive forms of love that can sometimes be pretty intricate?
I think one of the ways you can do that, and what I did in Socrates in Love, is to go out and inquire with others and find out what their conceptions of love are, and see if their practices of it are better or worse or different than yours, and if there's some way that they go about it that you might want to add to your own way of practicing and expressing love. I know that when I went, for instance, to Japan, they believe that the community is more important than the self quite often. And even their most intimate relationships, they would put community first. I asked myself, would I ever put others ahead of my wife? And my resounding answer is no. So I think it depends on the culture you come from.
Let's press this. Thanks for the question. Let's press this thing about love and the self, because you just said that in passing.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, what does love do for me, for the self? I mean, why? You might think does love complete me? Am I incomplete without my loves or something like that?
Does it have to do anything for the self? There are those who think that it should be totally selfless. It depends. It depends on what you want out of it. Can love itself be the ultimate object for you?
Here's a suggestion. Tell me what you think of this. When I love somebody or some collection of people, I take them as another self, a self for me. Here I have myself, my one and only self. But to love my wife is to take her as like another self, a kind of additional self. And I regard her as at least that self over there is at least as important as this self over here. And that's what it is to love your country, to take your fellow citizens as another self. That's what it is to love humanity, to take all humans as another self for me. What do you think about that thought?
Well, I think you can look at society as a type of self. And you might want to live in a society and do your utmost to create a society that is a reflection of your own higher aspirations.
But for me, I mean, getting married, falling in love, getting married was a transformative experience. But I think more transformative was having children. And the love you feel for a child before you really get to know them. And, you may believe it's the cutest kid that ever, came into the world the way kids do. But it's amazing. And then the complications of having a child seem to me deepen all your relationships, your relationship with your wife, your understanding of your parents. Yes. And to me, there's something that's such a kind of what you might call a high bandwidth connection between the people in your family that you love, that all this talk about love of humanity and, realizing that, every kid all around the world. I mean, I'm all for appreciating the needs and realizing the importance of people outside of your own family and so forth. But I think when you call out love, it really it's got to be too vapid a relationship to really get at what you have with your family.
Well, see, that's why I was saying there is something deep. I think there is something deep, though, because I take my fellow citizens as selves for me, right? And it's not just about me. It's not just about me and my wife. It's not about me and my children. It's about us, and my fellow citizens are in us with me, right? I don't think that's thin. I think that can be deep and important. I don't know, Chris, what do you resolve this dispute?
I was thinking of when my baby was born a year and a half ago. I knew the moment I saw her that I would willingly throw myself in front of a bullet, in front of a train, anything to protect this little creature. But I did also have thoughts about, I live part of the year in Chiapas, Mexico, where there's great poverty and inequality. And it's like, if I want my daughter to get the best education she can and have the best health care, and I just want it really for my daughter. I don't really care about what others have. If I don't also want that for the other children in the community we live in, someday she's going to ask me, Daddy, why do I have so much and they have nothing? And why aren't you doing anything about it?
If she's a good person, she'll ask you that. We got more callers, more questioners from our live audience over this side of the room. Welcome to Philosophy Talk.
Thank you. My name is Nicolette. I'm from Vancouver, Washington, and I'm really enjoying this discussion. And I admit that I do not remember Socrates. But what I do remember is Aristotle's definition of love. And what I remember most about that is he talked about the love between a parent and a child, and that is a love. It's a form of love. But what he called true love was between two individuals who are of equal status. And one of his definitions is that you understand the hopes and dreams of that other person, and you work collaboratively together to fulfill that dream. And so there is a sense of self-sacrifice.
So we're gonna try and answer your question after the break. So we'll take it up right after the break. You're listening to Philosophy Talk. We're coming to you from Powell City of Books in Portland, Oregon, and the topic is the varieties of love with our guest, author Christopher Phillips.
In our next segment, we're going to ask what happens when our loves compete. Would you betray your friend to save your lover, betray your lover to save your country, betray your country to serve humanity?
Loves in conflict, plus more questions from our live audience when Philosophy Talk continues.
I'll be here just to see you through. Now ain't that love? Ain't that love? Ain't that love? Ain't that love, baby, that I feel in my heart for you?
We're talking about the many varieties of love. I'm John Perry, and this is Philosophy Talk, the program that questions everything.
Except your intelligence. I'm Ken Taylor. As we've learned, there are many forms of love: self-love, romantic love, love of humanity, family, friends, and even divine love. Can we have it all? Can we experience and enjoy all the varieties of love without conflict?
We're here at Powell City of Books with Christopher Phillips, author of Socrates in Love.
Chris, let's go back to Nicolette's question about Aristotle. It goes back to your point about these different forms of love being kind of mutually reinforcing and interlocking. And because if you love this person, you produce children, you love the children, your children are your family as one family among others, you treat them as fellow citizens, you love them. I mean, so it just all expands out into one big happy thing, right?
I'm not sure if it's one big happy thing at all, but I think that it can, if it has a transformative element to it, then it's not simply a matter of having a commitment to someone or something, but to question that commitment from time to time, and to ask yourself, is this a healthy commitment, or should I change what I'm committed to or the person I'm committed to? It can lead to some uncomfortable.
Do you think it's just up for grabs? I mean, especially if you think of all these things. So I have my family. Right. I have my spouse. I mean, today we think of that as optional. Like, I could walk away from that spouse, I would remain, right? And just this thing would go away. Well, if you think, well, I have my children. Can I just walk away from my children? I remain. I have my country. Can I just walk away from my country and I remain? Don't one's loves somehow define the self so that somehow they're just not like optional things that you can question in that way?
I think that it might be healthy sometime at least to imagine what it would be like to leave your closest commitments. What would that be, even to visualize that? Some people say it's unimaginable, and yet many people do it all the time. Presidents of the United States claim commitments to certain things, and then they don't live up to them. I didn't say the current one. I just said, I was speaking in general.
But I mean, Ken, your question really poses two fundamental different conceptions of humans and their place in the whole thing. I mean, one is kind of my station and its duties through whatever contingencies I am, a certain person that lives at a certain time in a certain country, in a certain family, the family I was born into and the family that I gave birth to. And that defines who I am. It defines what my duties are. And the idea of stepping out of that makes no sense. The other one is individualism. We're all these individuals. And, there's relationships between us, but the individuality remains. And
You shouldn't give it up, even in your most intimate relationship with your spouse. You must be careful not to give up yourself and betray yourself. That's a difficult question you pose to Christopher.
It is a difficult
But
question.
even when my wife, when she gave birth to a child, and I have this responsibility, this awesome, wonderful responsibility, well, that in turn, with me, gave birth to other ideas of what I might like to do with the rest of my time.
We've got more questions from our live audience. Welcome to Philosophy Talk, sir.
Hi, I'm Sean. I'm a philosophy major here at Portland State University, and very happy to have you guys back in town. My question is regarding one of my favorite philosophers, Nietzsche, and of course some of his fantastic and sometimes darker views on love. One of his most famous quotes, of course, is, "That which is done for love is beyond good and evil." Do you believe that within the sphere of morality, love is that kind of overriding force for us?
Chris has an answer there. I think Chris has an answer.
No, I don't have the answer. I'm just asking, what does that mean for love to be beyond good and evil? What does that amount to?
Well, in my mind anyway, it means that when we do things that satisfy our deep emotional needs, that we're not acting within the moral sphere anymore, that we can't judge morally those actions that are done to satisfy primal parts of ourselves.
Let's put some more bite on this question. Thanks for the question. It's a good question. But I want to put a little bit more bite on this. Goes back to our theme of love and conflict, right? Okay, I love my wife. I love my children. I love humanity too, right? My kid could say, "Daddy, why don't you give me the PlayStation 3, right?" And I said, "Well, because I gave that money to help the poor in whatever." I said, "Wait, don't you love me?" "Yes, I do, but I love the poor and wherever too." I mean,
I think your child should say, "Daddy, there's a fallacy there. You have a lot of money, and you don't want to take this chunk, and because you gave that chunk to Oxfam, you can't buy me a PlayStation. You still have lots of money left. You're paying the rent. You're getting your suit cleaned. I mean, let's be real."
Well, yeah. Okay. More questions from our live audience. Welcome to Philosophy Talk.
My name is Karen from Portland. I've got a question about love of neighbor and love of society. It seems like in the past years that the love of neighbor and society has been supplanted by fear, and many people say that's caused because of love of family. People are worried about their family, and so therefore they think that's more important than love of society or concern about their neighbor. Do you think that this can be reversed, and if so, how?
So could you be a little more concrete? You're thinking about after 9/11,
Yes.
people kind of saying, well,
I didn't want to get that political, but yes.
Yeah, no, that's right. I mean, I love my neighbor, I love the whole world, but actually I'm going to have this compound where I have my own food and a lot of guns.
Exactly, yes, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of friends who have basically live barricaded in their homes, and they have these home entertainment detention centers. Is that healthy? Does love imply an element of risk where you want to make sure your family lives in a healthier environment than that? So do you try to chip down the barriers that have existed that create fundamentalist views that almost inspire people to build invisible walls between one person and another? Or do you take a risk and go outdoors and try to find out why is there so much unbridled hate in the world?
Yeah.
And what, if anything, can I do about it?
I want to switch the topic, though. Thanks for the question. I want to switch the topic a little bit, because we haven't talked about this other one thing. We mentioned divine love. No, I don't know if I've ever felt divine love. I don't know if I've ever felt the presence of the divine in my life. I don't know, right? But there is this thing. I think the reason we think of divine love is because it's unconditional, total, to the foundations of your being. It sees you completely, but still accepts you and loves you. Now, why do we have a concept like that? Because we think no finite love could be love enough, right? Because it's always conditional and constrained, and we project the divine out there so that there's an unconditioned, ultimate love that will never abandon you. What do you think of that?
I don't know. I think that love is conditioned, and that can be divine. It's conditioned by my culture, by the way I was brought up, by my education and expectations. What's wrong with that?
But don't you think that you can think of a human lover?
Yeah.
They could betray you. They could disappoint you. They could turn out, to love themselves more than you. Your nation could betray you. Could not be but God can never betray you.
Well, at any rate, Jesus. I mean, it seems to me the picture you're giving is one that's associated with Jesus, who's supposed to be identical with God, but the God of the Old Testament, it's pretty conditional as far as I can see. But, people, I've talked to people in prison, people that are really down on themselves for very good reasons, and they still have this feeling that, they have this unconditional love from Jesus. Eric Fromm said that unconditional love is supposed to come from the mother, and that, it usually has some limits, most mothers not being totally divine, and so, but I don't know if most of us need that unconditional love. Most of us aren't so down on ourselves that we need to be convinced that there's someone out there that loves us no matter what. Do we, or do we?
Well, I don't know about we. I can only speak about me, and I keep thinking about what Diotima said in Plato's Symposium about that ultimately love boils down to relationships. And so there's types of eros. There's vulgar eros, and then there's heavenly eros. And so what you need to do is find that right person at the right time where that sexual energy and passion leads to a window of opportunity where you're sort of desirous of trying to reveal higher forms.
So, guys, we got lots of questions here. I'm going to try and get as many of them in the short time we have left. So try and be brief, because we're going to...
Hi, my name's Kara from Forest Grove. And this love of country that we sort of keep coming back to seems to me a very tribal thing. It seems to be sort of an in-between love of, an individual and love of humanity. And the love for humanity, isn't that somehow connected to the Kantian idea of the universal imperative? That what you want for yourself, what you want for the ones you love, that there is an obligation there to extend that to the rest of humanity, and if you do, then that's good, and if it's something that you wouldn't want for yourself, then you don't extend it to humanity, and that's bad. So,
tough questions. You want to say something, Chris?
That is a tough question. I think you continually have to ask yourself, what do I want out of love? Is it enough if I just focus on my own wants and needs and those of my wife and child and maybe my immediate neighbors, or do I have to worry about others down the street, much less the other side of the world?
Let's go back to Aristotle and friendship, right? Where friendships care about each other's good, right, and they promote each other's good. Friends take each other to be a self for the other, as it were. And Aristotle's thought about polity was that the citizens should be related to each other as friends. To love your country is to befriend your fellow citizens.
Yes.
It's not to love in the Aristotelian way. It's not to love an abstraction. Right. It's not to be devoted to an abstraction. It's to befriend her and him and him and her, and for them to befriend you back. Now that, you can say that's tribal, but no, when people befriend it, unless you think friendship is a second-grade thing, a polity in which people befriend one another, that's a darn good thing. Now, it's true that idea dropped out of modernity, the Hobbesian state where people were at odds with each other and they had to make the state. But the Aristotelian idea of civic friendship, I think, is a deep and cool one, and if we could recover that, I think it would be amazing.
Yeah, but Aristotle had in mind a polity somewhat smaller than Vancouver, Washington, and one that wasn't sitting next to a huger one without a sales tax.
Well,
and so things were just a lot different in those days.
But the Greek polis was actually not that small. It was more intimate than it is now, but the notion of philia, friendship, love, was not just meant to connote love of your immediate friends, but it could also mean a love of strangers within your polity, that you all had certain shared ends and ideals. And I think that even in a vast society, you can recapture.
Yeah. Last question.
Hi, I'm Rebecca from Portland, and I've heard a lot of talk both tonight and generally when discussing love about love from parents to children. But how about the child's love for a parent? And do you guys think that true love can really stem from vulnerability and necessity? By the way, I love you, Mom and Dad.
Chris, what do you think?
Does love have to go both ways? This child who apparently didn't ask to be brought into the world, as far as you know, do you love that child no matter what? I held a dialogue on family love in which a woman talked about the fact that her child had done something horrible and was in jail, and everyone else had given up on him. But she said, I brought this child into this planet, and I do judge, but I will never give up on that person, on that soul, even if he is estranged from, or wants to be estranged from me because of lots of different things. That doesn't have to go both ways, that type of love between parent and child, or is a parent's love supposed to be there through thick and thin, regardless of what that child does or whether that child returns it.
Do you have children?
I don't have children.
I was going to say the commandment is sometimes translated love thy mother and father, sometimes honor thy mother and father. I think the latter makes a lot more sense. You love your children, you honor your parents. Hopefully you love them too, but as you point out it in your question, there is such a welter of complex relationships that you have to your parents before you're old enough to even think about loving them. But honoring them, that's a duty.
Yeah.
And I feel that very strongly because I have 3 kids and 10 grandkids.
On that note, Chris, we're going to have to thank you for joining us.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Our guest has been Christopher Phillips, author of Socrates in Love.
For the final word, we turn to the love-struck Ian Scholes, the 60-second philosopher.
Ian Scholes. We don't know that much about Socrates' wife, Xantippe. She was almost certainly much younger than he was. He was 70 when he died, and the two had 3 children, making her still of childbearing years. She's come to be perceived as the ultimate harpy. Stories abound. After a fight, when she emptied a chamber pot in Socrates' head, he quipped, "Did I not say that Xantippe's thunder would end in rain?" Oh, the boys laughed at that, I'll bet. When a friend asked him how he could stand Xantippe's temper, he said, "You do not mind the cackle of geese." The friend said, "At least a goose provides eggs and baby geese." Socrates said, "And Xantippe is the mother of my children." So he can tolerate her nagging because she's a baby maker. Yet another friend asked him how he could stand being married to her, and he said, "I follow the example of the rider who wishes to become an expert horseman. None of your soft-mouthed, docile animals for me. The horse for me to own must show some spirit. Hence my choice of wife. I know full well if I can tolerate her spirit, I can with ease attach myself to every human being else." So he married her to try his patience. If I'd been married to the guy, I would certainly have taken every occasion to try it. Once she ripped the coat off his back in the marketplace. When yet another friend urged Socrates to hit back, he said, "Yes, by Zeus, that while we are sparring, each of you may say, 'Good for you, Socrates. Way to go, Xantippe.'" Well, for a guy who frowned upon dust-ups in the marketplace, Socrates had his share of them. In an account of his life, Diogenes claims that because of the forcefulness of his arguments, Socrates was often beaten up, had his hair torn out, was mocked and despised. Socrates' ability to irritate, some might claim, was what got him condemned to death, and yet he was strangely unflappable, indolently patient, affectless. As for Xantippe's ill temper, how accurate are the sources on that? If Socrates' friends didn't like her, could it be because time spent with her was not time spent with them? And Socrates did spend a lot of time yakking and drinking with his buddies. In their eyes, perhaps, Xantippe was the prototype of Yoko Ono, hell-bent on busting up the band with her feminine wiles. So to recap, there's Socrates, always even-keeled, coming home at all hours or not at all, bruised and bleeding from some scrape with no money because the only job Socrates could hold down was arguing with Athenians in the marketplace. If Xantippe was ill-tempered, no wonder. On the other hand, there is her final appearance in Socrates' life. He's just been released from chains, is about to drink hemlock and die. Xantippe is there with one of their children. She commiserates with Socrates. He's about to enjoy his last conversation with his friends. Socrates then commands his friends to lead her away. We last see her crying and beating herself on her way to widowhood and 3 kids. And Socrates gets to spend one last time, yakking up with his drinking buddies. So Socrates comes down to us as the father of all Western philosophy, and Xantippe comes down to us as the mother of all shrews. Now I ask you, is that fair? I gotta go.
Philosophy Talk is a presentation of Ben Manila Productions and the trustees of Leland Stanford Junior University, copyright 2008.
Our executive producer is David Demarest.
Special thanks to Kim Sutton, Michael Drannon, and all of our friends at Powell's Books for such wonderful hospitality. Also, thanks to Mark Davis, Merle Kessler, Zoe Cornelia, and Corey Goldman.
Our production coordinator is Devin Strolovich. Daniel Elstein is our director of research, and Lael Weiss is our webmaster.
Support from Philosophy Talk comes from various groups at Stanford University, the Friends of Philosophy Talk, and from Powell's City of Books. Support also comes from the Templeton Foundation.
And from the members of KALW, local public radio San Francisco, where our program originates.
The views expressed or misexpressed on this program do not necessarily represent the opinions of Stanford University or of our other funders.
The conversation continues on our website, philosophytalk.org.
I'm John Perry.
And I'm Ken Taylor. Thank you for listening.
And thank you for thinking.